When I said I was going to be at Save Mart to save 4 positions, in 3 hours I got 1,000 signatures that I delivered to this dais. The people of Atwater want police officers there. That's why we live in the incorporated city of Atwater. Not getting in the middle of the fire debate, but I'm not a member of this oversight committee, and I have all the respect in the world for this council and our city manager, but I think a good focus and a high priority, I hope, and I'm not in these meetings, is getting these staffing levels back and response times back to 90 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Eric Lee, 1199 Atwater Boulevard. It seems to be we keep debating this issue almost every council meeting. We see it in the newspapers. This isn't police against fire, we know that, but we are raising the staffing levels. We are adding to the police rosters. There are interviews being done. I think Chief Petro could probably shed some light on this. We're not ignoring the police department. We know what the staffing levels we need in this town are, and we're moving in that direction. And I think Measure H is a big part of that. It's working. It doesn't happen overnight. You just don't grab an officer off the street from some other town and say, come to Atwater. There's procedures. There's things that have to be followed. And I've seen a lot of positive movement in the police department as well as in the fire department because of Measure H. It's working, and I think we need to understand that it's not going to happen overnight, but I feel it's far ahead of the schedule that I had anticipated.
Thank you. Is anyone else who wishes to make a comment? Seeing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Consent calendar. Background information has been provided on all matters listed under the consent calendar. These items are considered to be routine. All items under the consent calendar are normally approved by one motion. If discussion is requested on any item, that item may be pulled, may be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Is there any council person who wishes to remove an item for separate action? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on any item that is on the consent calendar? Yes.
Madam Mayor, it's not on the consent calendar.
It has to be.
The two gentlemen in the back, we're having trouble sitting right here, hearing everything, because we're hearing their conversation back there.
Thank you.
If they could stop.
Thank you. I will try to keep the audience under control, Mrs. Bowling, and thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, moved by Mr. Jeff Favero to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bergman. Mr. Bergman, your light was on. Did you have any other comment?
No, ma'am, I was going to
Okay,
make the
you were-
motion.
Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Jeff Rivero. We have a second by Mr. Bergman. Call for the question.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Ball,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you. Item number 6 on the agenda, request from the CAL FIRE City Fire Department. Captain Phillips.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm just in front of you tonight requesting permission to utilize 5 Corners again this year for our MDA boot drive. It's going to be on March 3rd and 4th is the dates we'd like to do it on, and from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. each day. Thank you. May 3rd and 4th. I can't even read what's there in front of me. So we would like to utilize that again this year. Last year we were able to raise $5,883 for the 2 days we were out there. The state CAL FIRE as a total unit last year in the state raised 485,000. So we're a small portion of that, but I think we do a great job in this local community, and hopefully with your support, we'll be able to exceed those goals this year. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of Captain Phillips? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bergman,
I'll second the motion.
seconded by Mr. Jeff Rivero. Any further discussion? Call for the question.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Fall,
Yes.
motion carries.
On behalf of the city, Captain Phillips, we want to thank you and the Atwater Fire Department for taking your time to do this for the charity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One more quick thing. I'd like to invite again the council members if you'd like to help participate on either one of those 2 days. I know Councilman Bergman and Jeff Rivero, I think, has been out there in the past. So 9 to 3, Saturday and Sunday, May 3rd and 4th. If you guys want to help out, we'd be more than happy to have you out there. Thank you.
Muscular dystrophy. Thank you very much. Appreciate your contributions. Public hearings. First public hearing is 7, waiving the first reading and introducing ordinance number CS 952, repealing and reenacting Chapter 8.38 graffiti of the Atwater Municipal Code. Lieutenant Joseph.
Yes, Madam Mayor, member of the council. The City Council directed the city manager to evaluate and make amendments as necessary to Title 8, Health and Safety, Chapter 8.38, graffiti, in order to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of graffiti abatement. Specifically, the City Council asked for the reduction in the time period for the abatement of graffiti by the property owner. Also asked the methods of cost recovery be improved for situations when the abatement for graffiti by the city becomes necessary. The proposed ordinance replaces the current provisions relating to graffiti abatement in Chapter 8.38 of the Atwater Municipal Code, with provisions that prohibit graffiti on all properties within the city and requires all property owners to remove any graffiti on their property within 5 days of receiving a notice of or an order to abate graffiti. See this last page here. The current code specifies a 5-day time frame for the property owners to remove the graffiti upon receiving a notice and order to abate graffiti. If the property owner does not remove the graffiti within the time frame provided in the notice and order to abate the graffiti, or upon the conclusion of a hearing on the issue and the appeal of the city council if requested, the current ordinance provides that the city may abate the graffiti and make the cost of such abatement and lien or special assessment on the property. In addition, the city knows who caused the graffiti to be on particular property. The proposed ordinance would allow the city to recover the cost of abatement for that individuals or their parent or guardian if the individual is a minor instead of the property owner.
Any questions of Lieutenant Joseph before we open up the public hearing? Yes, Councilman Jeff Rivero.
Actually, I was going to ask Mr. Terpstra. I thought I conveyed, but apparently I was misunderstood or didn't convey myself correctly when we talked about this, but I was hoping for a full week for people to be able to take it off. And on this, it says 5 days, but I was hoping that would say 5 business days, so that way it would give a person a full week. And then a second question I had talking to some citizens was that, is it possible if somebody is in violation that we can reduce their time period? So if somebody's not taking care of it, that we can lower their time period?
Give me a better
Attorney?
example. On the
So in
first
other
one, go
words,
ahead.
if Joe Citizen is told you gotta take off your graffiti, and he does, he has a full week. But if this is somebody, and you've seen in the city, and we've complained about a couple areas where it went months without being taken care of, so that we can lower their full week of 5 work days into 3 days. So if you're somebody who habitually doesn't care about taking care of it, that we can lower your days. But for Joe Citizen, who takes care of it, we give him a full week. So in other words, your first violation, you have a week, but if you're
A
somebody
longer
that's-
grace period for the
yeah,
first
a longer
violation.
grace period.
I think that could probably be defended. I think that would probably be something we could defend. And we could rework the ordinance slightly to accommodate that. I know I was asked by another council member about the 5 days earlier, so there might be more comments on that. Maybe we should wait until those all come out.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Joe Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The portion where it says if the individual's a minor, where you would go after the parent, now, my understanding is in law, in some cases, that if the individual's still living at home, in some cases, some of these graffiti artists, if you call them, or trashers, they're over 18, yet they're still living at home. And it's my understanding in some cases that if the individual's still living at home, they can still go after the parent for certain crimes. And I don't know if what I've read before wasn't specifically graffiti, but if they're 18, 19, 20 and still living at home with their parents and don't have a job, still can't pay it, that they're still the responsibility of their parents. And I believe in some cases that this is actually, that is actually one. So I was wondering, if you're keeping somebody in your home that's going out and doing criminal activities, then you may be responsible. Could you check on that?
Well, yeah, we can. I suspect that when we get to enforcement of this, we're probably going to run into all sorts of interesting defenses along those lines. I think the best thing we can do is draw the clear line as best we can, and then let people argue that, well, that person living with me is ultimately responsible and I'm not, and let the prosecutors work that out. But it's certainly something we can look at.
I'm just saying that it's my understanding that they have gone after the parents for other issues, for theft and things like that. So
I'm familiar with that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just as long as we send the message, no, we're not stopping here. There is going to be retribution. So, if you're a parent, get with it. If you have somebody who's doing criminal activities, either boot them out or change them. So, anyway, thank you.
Councilman Bergman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to echo Councilman Jeff Rivero's comments. I too feel that the 5 days is a little short. I think going to 7 would give folks a little more chance to do it. And I know it's something we can't put in here, but I know we have civic organizations such as the Boy Scouts, and we even have high school students that are doing public service work. Wouldn't this count towards that if we reached out to some of these schools and the civic organizations and asked if this would be something they'd be willing to do for the citizens that don't have the ability? Because I know we've talked about it in the past where we have a lot of senior citizens that are getting tagged and they don't have the ability to get out and do it. So is this something maybe that we could do as a city to reach out to some of these civic organizations and see if they would be willing as a community service hours to maybe help in some of these situations?
Do you wish to answer that, Lieutenant Joseph? And then-
Yes, we have, the way the chief has it, or city manager, we have a person we do have on contract to do the painting over. If someone is unable to do so, in the ordinance, it does have that possibility where we can go there and take care of matters for them without any problems. Those that are unable to do so, either physically or economically.
The problem with volunteers is matching the graffiti with the proper color of the area that they have tagged. That's been, and some of the people, we used to get given gray paint. So every time we had graffiti, the people would come out and they'd volunteer, but they would paint over with gray paint. Well, it looked worse than the graffiti almost. So that's why with having a person to be able to match it, that's one of the things about having a person who has 12 different colors to be able to match it, so that we try to blend it in. So, but that's a good thought if we could be able to blend the colors in. But I think that the lieutenant said has a way that we can help those people who cannot afford
Yes,
to do it. That's the way I understood it.
Yeah, it's in the ordinance.
Councilman, are you done, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. All right, Councilman Jeff Rivera.
I think the whole council agrees with, we don't want to make a victim the second time. So we want the graffiti out of our town, but the people who are victims, we don't want to victimize again by slapping a fine on them. So I think we're all in agreement that we need to get some type of community service, or maybe the high school who offer community service, to have assistance for people that need help. And since that's in here, I like that idea. So I would support, and I want to have these community service people or organizations, I want it to be in front of it instead of in back. I don't want to pass something and then all of a sudden a bunch of issues pop up where people are complaining, hey, I can't do it, I'm upset about it. So if we have these organizations that'll go in and help assist right away, up front, so then we don't run into those programs. That's what I'm looking for, to be in front of the ball instead of behind it. Thank you.
Okay, we have this, Councilman Joe Rivera.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's one thing, and Councilman Jeff Farrell hit on it too, is about victimizing the victims. And there's people out there, as he said, that were retired. They have buildings. I've heard from two of them especially. They go on vacations too during the summertime. So if we send out a message or a letter, if it's certified, it'll be when they, is that what happens? So it won't take place until they actually receive it, because they could be on vacation for 2-3 weeks and then come back and then saying, okay, you owe this. You know, if you're going after graffiti, I don't see this as really solving the problem. Hey, let's, you know, we have a limit right now. Let's get it taken care of. You need to make laws harder for the criminal. You need to actually enforce it when someone's tagging it. You know, maybe a letter to the attorney's office saying, hey, we need to clean up stuff around here. And the DA's office, and maybe even a letter to the judges. Let's punish these people, because ultimately they're the ones that make the decision. What happens, how long it takes place, a little slap on the wrist, oh, see you later, because our jails are full of all these other worse crimes, so let's not bother with you. So maybe if we as a council send a letter and say, hey, there is a problem here, you take care of it for us, our officers are gonna arrest these people, let's make sure that you deal with it. I know that from what I've heard from some of those that have been tagged, they're saying, as someone said, more boots on the ground. I think Andy Crow coined that term a long time ago. So, but I agree with that. You put more boots on the ground to take care of those issues, so we won't have these kind of crimes, and so officers won't be all stuck on just some of the worst case scenarios, but also these, because it's affecting all of our businesses, it affects the look of our community. So I would like this council or to the city attorney to draft a letter just expressing our wishes that all these criminals, that it is a serious case. There is something serious here. It's affecting a lot of people that you don't really think about. The businesses, the homeowners. You come into town, you try to sell your house. What happens? Oh, look at this community. There's too much graffiti. And even the kids. If they're exposed to it too often, hey, that's some might be influenced today. That's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and do that too. So I think it is a really serious issue, and we need to look at it from the judges on down, and not just okay, this is going to solve it by going after the property owners. I think we, to me, I know it's a little bit extra time, but some property owners need it, and that's not going to solve the problem. So. I'm not supporting this. I'd like to see us do something a little step above that and actually go after the people that, and supply more officers if there's extra funds.
It
All right,
does
thank
have in
you.
the ordinance, Mr. Rivera, regarding going after the people that are responsible legally. Our ability, city ability to retrieve the funds for it. It's in the ordinance.
This is a public hearing, so we need to open it up and get the opinion of the public involved with this. This is the time in which the public may speak on this item, either for or against it. Please come forward, state your name and your address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Eric Lee, 1199 Atwater Boulevard. I am a property owner in downtown Atwater. I've been hit with graffiti on many occasions. As a matter of fact, I usually buy a gallon of paint at least every year and a half before it dries out. That way I have the ability to color match what they paint. I know, Joe, you referred to more boots on the ground again. And how many cops are enough, Guy? I mean, do you want to hire 100 cops? And if you were serious about that, why didn't you do it, 7 or 8 years ago or whatever? If you've really read this ordinance, it's very well written. Mike and Sammy did a very good job on it. Most of the time in the past, nothing really happened when they caught the little graffiti artists. They weren't prosecuted. Courts wouldn't do anything. DA wouldn't do anything. Under the new ordinance, if you look at some of the penalty to it, we talk about suspending driver's licenses for 3 years. We're making the suspect financially responsible if they're under 18, the parents, and over 18, they'll have to pay for it. We also will make part of their probation. They'll have to come back and clean off any graffiti on the building that is tagged for free for a year. That's pretty strong. As far as the number of days you're going to give people, there's some wiggle room on that. In 15 years, code enforcement has never cited anybody for not taking the graffiti off their building. I think you can put a time frame on that. You can make it 5 working days. You can make it 3 working days. As long as there's discretion left with your code enforcement officer and your police department, that can be handled. But it's time that we put some strong rules in the graffiti ordinance, and it's time that we show these people that we're no longer going to put up with this in Atwater. They can go to another city that wants to waffle on this issue like some of you are talking about tonight, those towns. And I think we can also accommodate people who may be elderly and not able to afford to paint over their own graffiti. If you look at the ordinance, there's a way to do that in there, and that will work, and it'll work very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against this item? Please come forward and state your name, address for the record.
Good evening, Bill Barkman, 2100 Fruitland Avenue. I'm speaking for this ordinance because it needs to happen. Any city that wants to present itself in a proper way to attract business needs to address issues like this. Also has to be a town and a council that takes action. I commend Councilman Bergman for standing up and saying we can certainly get nonprofit organizations to help. The men in our church, for example, are fed up with the sound bites talking about the victims, and I've come here tonight to say that if you or chief or city need help, we have men who will volunteer. And if it takes a little bit of money to buy a quart of paint that will match, we'll certainly help with that. But we are invested in our community. There's been comments about the effectiveness of the ordinance officer, and we found Mr. Teeter to be very helpful when our church was tagged with gang and satanic graffiti. Not only did he help us, he gave us parameters when we could get this done. When we couldn't get the drawings off, he pointed us to the person that the city goes to, and that person actually came out and did some work for us. So I find that one of the things that is lacking in this discussion is the fact that we forget about the spirit of the law as well as the letter of the law. Quite frankly, if the city council and the city manager cannot trust their employees to operate in good faith as well as the heart of the law, then maybe you need some different leadership and different people that are working for you. And with that, I'll finish my statement.
Thank you.
But I do endorse the ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais. And Councilman Berkman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I move to amend section 8.38.050, letter A, to change the wording from 5 days to 7 days to remove the graffiti.
I'll second that.
Is that seconded by Mr. Joe Rivero?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Joe Rivero? Mr. Jeff Rivero? You had a
Yeah,
question?
Actually, I was going to ask for, if you don't mind amending it, I'd like to have it 5 working days, which would give you the weekend, and in case it's a 3-day weekend, so 5 working days would give you at least that 7.
I'll take that amendment.
And the other thing is, I know there's a motion on the floor, but I would like Lieutenant to get up here. We have one heck of a graffiti team out there busting their tails.
Yes, sir.
I know that we have a graffitiing, Mr. Paul Paul's done an excellent job on, Creighton has done an excellent job on wiping out our graffiti. And I think this is a three-prong attack. We're asking our citizens to help us out. We have our police officers kicking butt. And we also have Mr. Creighton's business. But I don't think we've taken the time to give proper respect to the officers that have done an outstanding job on our graffiti. So if you don't mind taking a moment to tell us and inform us of what an outstanding job they've done.
On the update on the graffiti team? On the
Yes.
This is the graffiti unit that Chief Petro allowed me to put together, that we just put 2 officers together, and since that time, they have made over 70 arrests, and they've hit some major players that have committed majority of our graffiti in our city, and they are continuing to do so. In fact, they're right now going to court on 2 of them for major felony charges, and they made another arrest over the last week. It was in the paper, and that's the one we're talking about regarding the issue involving the measure involving for our funding on that, which is not, that was a mistake on the article. We are working hard, and the graffiti team has basically minimized the graffiti from last year to this year quite a bit. We've had a big string of graffiti reported cases, but a lot of the major tagging and stuff has dropped quite a bit, almost like 20-30%. It's dropped fairly well. And the word on the street with a lot of the graffiti artists and the members committing these crimes is to stay out of Atwater right now, because it's going to continue, and they know we're going to go after them right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a measure on the floor, motion on the floor. Would we please repeat the motion?
Can I say
Motion,
something before you do that?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You do have a motion on the floor and you have a second, and then you
Right.
had one council member asking the maker of the motion if he would amend the 7 days to 5 business days. And the maker of the motion is okay with that. I don't know if the maker of the second is okay with that.
Yes, I agree
And
with
then
that.
the other thing that I'm not sure of is if we're gonna make further tweaks to this. I heard one suggestion from council member Jeff Rivero that there be a provision added that in the case of repeat offenders, they would be given only 3 business days. And staff can draft that language and bring it and include it in the ordinance for second reading and adoption if that's the direction of the council. So if you want to make those amendments now, or if you want to do that as part of making a motion to approve the whole thing, it's entirely within the discretion of the council. All I'm saying now is you have a revised motion, but not a revised second.
We have a revised second, Mr. Joe Rivero.
About bringing it to repeat offenders.
No, no,
I
the
agree
five-
with-
the five-
yeah, okay, I agree with that, yes.
Okay,
Right.
the 5 business days.
Yes.
Okay, so let's take action on
Just-
that first, if
let's-
it's okay.
Yeah, let's take action
All
on
right, fair enough.
on that one.
Bergman,
Yes.
Joe Rivero,
Yes, even though I wasn't recognized by my light, but I'll vote yes.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Fall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, so Councilman Jeff Rivero.
On the repeat offenders, I don't mind waiting and maybe having the task force team get together with the chief and coming up with a plan. Let's see how this works, and if then we have some problems with it, the city attorney, can we come back and say, you know what, there's certain people that are, and then maybe tweak with the ordinance at that time? But until then, let's see how it goes, and then the graffiti task force and the chief can fill us in on if there's an issue that maybe we need to address.
Okay.
I would agree. I think we need to, let's give this an opportunity. Councilman Joe Rivero.
Thank you, Madam
My
Mayor.
apologies for not recognizing you.
What I would
before.
like to see, though, is, one, that we're informed of how many businesses are brought up on penalty, and I would like to see the appeal process, because I know there's people out there that are very upset with their tagging and how many times they're tagged, and I don't see them as repeat offenders. If they keep getting tagged over and over again, they have their own issues about what's taking place, and they want stuff done to it. I mean, I hear a lot of hype out there, but they want it taken care of, and that's the ultimate thing, and they shouldn't be punished. So I want to hear the reports of anybody who, the businesses, how many are fined, and what the appeals, how many appeals there are. And one other thing too is the ordinance. We have many ordinances, and sometimes the courts don't enforce them, and they're not apparently obligated to. And that was my reasoning to send a message. If we're really serious, that's what you need to do, because the judges can look at it. Okay, I'm not bothering with it and let's go. And that was my whole point. You need somebody at the top there making those final decisions. So anyway, I'd like to still see a draft, a letter drafted saying we're serious about this issue.
Well, and I appreciate your comments, because as in my experience doing code enforcement in other jurisdictions, code enforcement from the district attorney's standpoint is often a very low priority. And what it takes is some emphasis from the leadership of the city to say that we're going to invest some of our own money. We're going to invest some of our own money in sending our legal counsel to court to stress to the judge how important this is to the community, so that even if the district attorney won't prosecute, we'll send the city attorney on some cases to set that initial tone, and thereafter our code enforcement officers can go. I don't think I've ever had
Madam
that
Order,
before.
Mayor, point of order.
Yeah, so in any event, we take that direction seriously from the council, and we'll emphasize that in the cases where we unfortunately would have to go to court. The way the ordinance is set up is we're going to take every measure not to have to do that, but if we do have to, we'll go in and make sure that point of emphasis is there.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilman Bergman.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, this is kind of two-pronged. If we could ask the audience, the whole audience, to silence their phones. We had two go off right in that time frame there. And the second, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff's recommendation as amended.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that matter? Ready to call for the question?
Ready?
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Fall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 8, waiving the first reading and the introducing of the ordinance number CS 953, amending Title 13, Public Services, Chapter 13.13, Water Conservation Program of the City of Atwater Municipal Code, Water Division Manager Shaw. Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. The regular meeting of January 27th, the City Council directed the City Manager to ensure the topic of water conservation to be on the February 24th, 2014 regular City Council meeting agenda for further discussion and possible direction. The meeting on the 24th, staff recommended the City Council review the city's current water conservation program, Chapter 13.13 of the Atwater Municipal Code, and provide staff with possible direction regarding any potential modifications. At the regular meeting on March 10th, staff presented proposed change to the city's water conservation program to the City Council. After discussion to the City Council, directed staff to proceed with a public hearing to amend the city water conservation program. A public hearing of the ordinance amending the City of Atwater Water Conservation Program was published for the City Council meeting of April 14th. On March 1st, Governor Brown signed a proclamation proclaimed a state of emergency for drought conditions in the state of California. This proposed modification places more stringent guidelines on the water conservation program. The proposed modifications include restricted hours, designated watering days, no watering days, and increased penalties for violations of the program. In addition, the proposed modification to the water conservation program may defer the need to add additional domestic water wells in the future.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Shaw? Councilman Jeff Rivero?
So after reviewing this, basically you're cutting out consumers shall not irrigate any longer or landscape between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. So you're changing the time, and also you're striking out from June to September, so it'll be all year long.
Yes.
And then the second thing would be for basically ground covers and plants. It's going to be the same between 7 p.m. and 10 a.m. And then there's 3 changes on fines.
That's, you're talking C,
Yeah, see?
that's for new planting. They can water any day on those hours.
So is that's
That's
new
just for
lawns,
new-
new ground cover, and new bedding plants?
Yes.
And then the other 3 would be for number 2, 3, and 4. The fines are going up. And what's the justification for the fines to go up? Because it costs more now to patrol?
Patrol, yes. We get called out at night. We're gonna have people going out at nights. We get a lot of complaints at night. That's when everybody's watering. And to cover our cost, to call somebody to get called out, we need to justify, raise the rates to recoup our funds on what it costs to send somebody out there.
And they're being called out at night for broken water heads? Or
No,
why-
we get calls at night for people that have a river of water running down the gutter, coming off of their lawn from their irrigation. We go out, we think it's a broken line or something. We get out there and find out it's just their irrigation has just been running.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we open up the public hearing? Seeing none, now's the time to open up the public hearing. Now's the time for the people to come forward and speak on this item, either for or against it. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Council, Mayor, Connie Hunter, representing the Atwater Chamber of Commerce. I was unclear about the time of
Connie,
water.
excuse me, can you give your address, please?
For the,
Your address, please.
I live at 1621 Dwight Way
Thank you.
in Atwater. I'm unclear about the time that we can water. That wasn't, where's the gentleman? There you are.
Mr. Shaw?
Yeah.
Can you answer that question for her?
You shall irrigate between 10 a.m. in the morning and 7 at night. No watering during the day.
You shall irrigate between 10 a.m. and 7?
No irrigating.
No irrigation.
Between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m.
So it's only at night? Okay. Water running down the street, does that apply to the city as well? Because I see a lot of broken irrigation systems in the city. I'm sure that that's going to be cleaned up.
But I think this
Thank you.
applies to all persons.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak, please come forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jim Price, 3467 Village Woods. During the last time that this became an issue before the council, it was in the early 90s, and I can't recall which. I'm old, so that's just a fault of mine. But in any case, I think the issue of water running down the street, I think, is a real big issue. What you're saying here about no irrigation between 10 o'clock in the morning and 7 p.m., I don't think there's enough teeth in that. This situation is a lot more serious than 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Santa Barbara right now, there's no irrigation at all. You got a lawn, you just may as well just plan on it browning out or using gray water to water it. It's just the way it is. One of the other things that happened back in the early 90s when we had this issue come before the council then, I live in an area near Atwater High School, and during the daytime I drove by there. Water was running like crazy over at the high school, across the parking lot and down the street. And when I reported it to the city, they said that is not our issue over there. They have their own well, so they can do with it as they wish. So I know that you don't have any jurisdiction over the school, but it seems to me that if you're going to, impose this type of thing on the citizens, we need to partner that with the school if they're still on an irrigation schedule such as that. I understand everybody wants to keep green lawns. I want mine to, stay as green as I can too, but these are issues that go way beyond the pale. This is the worst drought in the recorded history of the state.
So we need to, make our ordinance or any rules reflect that. And I think that maybe every other day schedule with the 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., something along those lines. But this is a lot more serious than just keeping the aesthetics up at a home or a business. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
James Vanier, 2401 Canal Drive. I think it's an excellent idea myself. My concern would be communication to the public, how that's going to be handled, whether it's just going to be to the property owner or will it be to every residence, irregardless of whether they're renter or property owner.
Thank you.
Judy Bowling, 137 Judy Drive, Atwater. The center out at Walmart, Target, all through there, any night or day that you drive through there, it's always running water from the flower plantings, and then there's a divider in front of this shopping center that runs across the lanes of traffic. I don't know who's responsible for that. I know on the block I live, I called and somebody came out, and I guess I don't know what they did, but the very next day that same party still had water running from the far end, the very end of the block, all the way to the end and around the corner. So whatever the rules are, they ought to get really, really nasty and not just a slap on the hand.
Thank you.
But who's ever responsible for the dividers and stuff like that, that needs to be looked at.
Excuse me, counsel, I had a question that I forgot to ask the
Could you please introduce
Mr. Shaw,
yourself
Connie
again
Hunter,
so we can
at
have you?
2132 Dwight Way.
Thank you.
Representing the chamber. Are we restricted? Are we restricted on the weekends? I know I moved here from Los Angeles, and we were on a very restricted water schedule. Are we to, I wish I could see you. Are we to water on the weekends or not water on the weekends and holidays? And Mr. Price said to give the days. I know coming from LA, I could only water 1 day a week. So I believe that that's extremely important. And are you going to enforce this on people that I see watering their sidewalks? Instead of sweeping the sidewalks, they use the water and their carports. And what about washing the cars?
Okay. Right. We need to.
We could not do that in Los Angeles at all. We were fined. And who is going to be the enforcer on this? Who do we really call to say, hey, this is happening, come and take care of it? I'm a farmer, and we conserve our water like crazy. And this is one of my pet peeves, seeing this water that the city people abuse. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, just to let you know, there is odd even days. So the even numbered addresses will be assigned watering days on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And the odd addresses are Sunday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And there is no watering on Monday at all. The, about washing down sidewalks and driveways, that is already in the code, where if you're wasting water, if it's going in the gutter, a significant amount, they can be cited for that. I've talked to code enforcement and the police department. At nights and stuff, we can have code enforcement, if he's out, he can go if we get complaints. I've talked to the corporals. They will send an officer out there if they're not busy to see if it warrants, if they can write a ticket or if we need to go out and write a ticket. We're gonna clamp down on water abuse this year.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak for or against? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the dais. And I have Mr. Jeff Rivero, followed by Mr. Bergman, Councilman Bergman.
I had two questions, one for Parks and Recreation. What is the game plan for city-owned areas to catch to make sure that we're not wasting water? And the second one is, what are the hours of the code enforcement officer? Because if they're not supposed to water in the daytime, then it would make sense to have these code enforcement in the hours that people aren't supposed to be using it.
Yeah, you just can,
Well, I can answer mine real quick. It's, during the day, we're at work. So we can, if we're going, we can get complaints, we can go by there, or, you know, the Public Works Department.
So Public Works would be policing it?
Yeah, for complaints, and just if we see people watering or overwatering, we stop. Right now, that's what we do, is we stop and cite them or give them warnings.
What's the current days and hours for the code enforcement?
City
He works
Manager?
day shift right now. He starts at 7:30 in the morning. So, but the Public Works Department, Water Division takes care of all the runoffs now, excess water.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Ferretta?
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, in regards to Councilmember Jeff Rivero's question regarding watering of parks and other landscaped areas, the city generally turns off all of its irrigation systems in those areas from the end of October until mid-March, about this time. Right now, currently, we have just bumped up the watering in those areas to 2 days a week only. So right now on landscaped areas, roadside landscaping areas, medians, and all the parks, they're at about 2 days a week, and they'll remain at 2 days a week until we notice areas that are either dying or drying out dramatically.
Thank you.
If there's a broken water head, what's the system to catch and maintain broken water heads?
If we notice it ourselves, we'll repair it directly. Unfortunately, as is the case in some of our roadside landscaping and even parks and the medians, we'll fix the sprinkler irrigation heads, and due to vandalism or other issues, that same sprinkler head could be broken within the next day. So in that respect, it would be important to have the citizens help report where they see water spilling over in those areas, or if they see, I guess we call them geysers in the parks, where there's a broken rotor or something like that. If somebody could report that to us, we could get on it right away as well.
Thank you. Councilman Larry Bergman?
Thank you, Mayor. My question, and Mr. Vineyard brought it up, is as we've heard in past issues, our city newsletter goes to the homeowners, the renters don't get them. So how are we going to get this to all of the residents, including the renters?
That's a really good question. We've had that problem. Most of the renters do get their bill, their water bill, utility bill. I don't know if there's a lot of them that don't.
Well, this also includes washing vehicles and that, and we have several apartments that don't get water bills that are out washing their vehicles, not using stop nozzles and letting the water run. So everybody needs to be aware of these, whether it's an apartment or a house, so, and business as well. So we need to make sure that everybody gets this. So that's my concern, is how are we going to get it out to all the residents?
That's something I haven't thought about. Yeah, well, you would think that they would get.
Never assume,
Yeah,
Mr. Shaw. Never assume.
I think
Yes,
in the
never
past,
assume.
we've used door hangers and things like that to put the water code, water ordinances, so that we know what they, and I think we're really gonna have to educate it this year. I know that Councilman Jeff Rivero made a suggestion about going to the schools and educating doing some contests at schools, so that we know that what they, so that the students would educate their parents. That's one way. Councilman Joe Rivero, followed by Councilman Jeff Rivero.
Well, the one way that I know we're going to do it this year is the CCR. We do just a flood mailing. It goes to every single address.
Okay.
If you have a post office box, or if it's your house, wherever you get mail, it's just, we send over 10,000, the CCRs out.
Perfect. That should cover it
Yeah.
pretty well. Thank you.
Councilman Joe Rivero, followed by Councilman Jeff Rivero.
Well, to save money too, that could just go in the community newsletter, the CC, that's, so we can inform them that way, so it wouldn't be separate from,
Well, CCR I have to send out every year
okay,
per the state.
all right, so.
Okay. Councilman Jeff Rivero.
I was gonna ask the chief if it's possible that we have the Explorers drop off door hangers. Think that
We could do that when school's out.
we can look into the possibility of that happening. Yeah. So that way every door handle would get the information.
Yeah, we could do that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this matter? Introduce a motion.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance number CS 953.
Second.
Okay. I'm sorry, we have to, you repeat that again? We have to, should he restate his motion, sir?
I think the city clerk is correct. Probably ought to restate, we'll just correct that to say that it is to waive first reading and introduce as opposed to adopt, and I'm sure that's what the council member intended anyway.
Waiving the first reading and introducing ordinance number CS 953, amending Title 13 Public Services, Chapter 13-13, Water Conservation Program of the Atwater Municipal Code.
And it's seconded by Mr. Bergman. Thank you, Mr. Jeff Rivero. Any further discussion on this matter? Call for the question.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Bergman,
Yes.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Fall,
Yes.
motion carries.
Item number 9, Councilman Jeff Rivero.
Before we move on, I was going to ask the city attorney. To me, we're asking people to conserve water, and some people will and some people won't. But I think there's got to be a carrot in front of the stick, or at least some type of reward for the people that are going out and doing their best job of conserving water. Is there any way that the city can charge per 1,000 gallons instead of charging per X? Because if I'm conserving water as much as I can and I save the city 5,000 gallons, and the next door neighbor's maxing his out to the 25,000 gallons or whatever, or is it 20 or 25,000? I thought it was 25,000.
25.
So if he maxes out at 25, I'm using 15 to 20. There should be some type of savings for me, because I'm saving the city. If you're just saying, no, you save 10,000 gallons, but we're still charging you as much as your next door neighbor, I think we defeat our purpose of asking the people to conserve. And I know some people out there will conserve no matter what, but I just think there should be, if you're doing that hard job of conserving and taking, I mean, there's a million ways of doing it, toilets and showers and even brushing your teeth. If you just turn off the water, if these people are going to those painstakings, there should be some type of reward for them. So is there, and do you mind coming back to let us know if there's some possibility that we can charge people per 1,000?
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, amending the miscellaneous fee schedule relating to commercial recycling fees.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. The city's most recent miscellaneous fees was adopted in February 12, 2007 by Resolution 2237-07. Said schedule had been amended from time to time to add, delete, or amend certain fees and charges for service. The city entered into a contract with Allied Waste Services of North America on July 1st, 2013 for the collection and disposal of refuse, green waste, and recyclables. The contract included a schedule of rates for said services. The recycling component of the contract is part of the state of California's diversion program to eliminate excessive garbage at the county landfill. When the city council adopted residential sanitation rates, commercial recycling rates were not included. Resolution number 2353-14 has been prepared to establish commercial recycling fees. Said fees are set at actual cost, which Allied is what they bill us, plus 11% administrative fee for our billing. There's a potential positive financial impact associated with the amending the miscellaneous fee schedule. Amended fee schedule will allow the city to recover contract costs associated with commercial recycling services. This staff has submitted to City Council consideration and possible action. Any questions?
Can I step in and say to our city clerk, would you please explain this to me as you did this morning so that we understand exactly what we're trying to do here? Remember what I said?
I wanted to add something before you do that.
Okay, go right ahead, please. Because gets kind of confusing, and you really need to understand what she's said.
Well,
Yes, go
Let me
ahead.
just add to Director Shaw's report that when the council adopted the rates, the last time you went through the rate study, this is one rate that was left off of the list. The commercial recycling was left off of the rate list at that time. There needs to be a rate. They're allowed under the franchise agreement to own, Allied that is, only to charge us what it costs them to provide the service so that we encourage recycling. The 11% that's added on to that actual cost, no profit for them, but just the actual cost, is our cost as a city of handling the billing as we do under the franchise agreement. So all this is a cleanup item to the rate revision that you did last time we went through this. It's just commercial recycling is actual cost to them, nothing more and nothing less, and the 11% that we get to charge, that we, the city, charge for handling all the billing and collection and monitoring the agreements and all that. So that's what this is
That's
about.
what that's
I don't know
about.
if the city clerk wants
No,
to add
that
anything to that,
is-
but
that's-
I did want to say in addition
Right.
to that, though, that there was at the last meeting some folks from the established haulers in town that had concerns about this contract. 9 months after we entered into it, we did have a meeting with them. I think the two sides are a lot closer, that is Allied and the other haulers, to understanding each other's positions and understanding where the city is on this. And so it was a productive meeting, but that dispute, if it's still festering out there, has nothing to do with this item tonight. So, and that's why you don't see representatives of those companies here, because they agreed at the meeting that we had last week that this item has nothing to do with that, it's just a cleanup item.
And this item is just ensuring the city that we receive the 11% administrative fees that we're,
Which we need to do in
Which
order
we
to
need
make sure the program is
Right.
whole, in order to make sure we cover our costs.
Okay.
So that's what this is about.
thank you.
And again, I defer to
and
the
I
clerk
thank-
if she wants to
no,
add.
I thank the city attorney and the city clerk, because I had some concerns about this, and I was not clear on how it was supposed to work. So thank you. Is there any questions before I open up the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing. Now is the time the public may come forward and speak either for or against this item. Please come to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. I will bring it back to the dais. And do we have any further discussion on the matter? I will call for the I will make a motion then to adopt resolution number 275314, amending the miscellaneous fee schedule relating to the commercial recycling fees. That's my motion. Is there a second to that?
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Councilman Jeff Rivero. Is there any further discussion? Call for the question.
Bergman,
Yes.
Joe Rivero,
Yes.
Jeff Rivero,
Yes.
Fall,
Yes.
motion carries.
I think we will, let's take a short recess.
Thank you.